Hello and welcome to Improvisations on Growth with Madhu, Siedler, business and life coach. Get ready for a new episode of Madhu's COVID-19 crisis log and for finding your own answers to questions like, where do you get your inner sense of psychological security from? Or, what does living life to the fullest mean to you? In these current times, could it simply mean embracing the here and now? Long-term planning doesn't seem constructive anymore. But do we even know what to plan for? How many times have you found yourself not knowing what you want and planning for something futile or maybe miswanting from the start? Listen to our podcast and construct your own answers. Well, that was my point earlier with the planning and the rabbit, in the sense of I want the rabbit, and at the same time I'm aware that yes, we can get hit by a bus, get hit by an asteroid, and yet there is still something in us that's craving this security.
And this is why I asked. So the plan is creating the security, but this means that I have created a tool which supposedly gives me security. And if you really look at what a plan is, it's just a made-up idea.
We do make these, and a lot of times we do follow them. That is the reality. Yes, I need the here and now, and at the same time, there's something in me that wants this.
I totally know what you mean, and I think this is what I try to use the metaphor for these two stories. Making peace with it is exactly, for me, is exactly that. So to realize, well, my plan is a made-up idea. And yes, it would be nice if it realizes itself.
And sometimes it does. That's what I'm
trying to do. And sometimes
it
does, and sometimes it does in a different way, and sometimes it doesn't. But for me, the important part is not to get my inner feeling of security out of this plan, but to get my inner feeling of security out of the here and now. Because the here and now is always here. And this is the only place that I can get my sense of security for.
It's almost like saying this is the guarantee. This moment in space and time with you, it's a guarantee because I'm going through it.
It's basically, it's shifting where we get our sense of security from. And we have to realize we are talking now about psychological security. So we are not talking about physical threats and, not knowing where I get my food from. And we also need to realize that a lot of people now have really existential problems. Their sense of security really depends on, can I pay my rent, and where do I get the money to put food on the table. So we are talking about a psychological sense of security.
Remember how a couple of episodes ago I was telling you about one of the cliches that don't really agree with me about living life to the fullest? And I feel like what you just said in this context, the living life to the fullest, it simply means acknowledging and living in the here and now, however that here and now is at this time.
I totally agree. Especially now with the really difficult situation with my father, this is what life is. I feel like this is what life is teaching me now, that I can be in the here and now and feeling my fear of losing him and seeing the pain he is in and the fear that he is in. But when I allow, and when I'm able to, and sometimes I'm not because it's just too overwhelming, but when I'm able to allow all this in, then it's living life to the fullest, because dying is part of it. And this is maybe what COVID can teach us as well.
And it's also, it sounds to me like the planning, probably feel like you cannot plan For example, if you had a trip, a family trip planned, now you kind of think about, can I still plan?
For me, the planning gets into the place where it should be. It's like organizing the daily life. So of course I plan to go shopping for groceries for my mom, and I plan to drive to Linz where my parents live. So I'm doing this planning, but it's not an escape into the future. It's not, okay, we will have a trip to whatever with my dad, because that's very likely not going to happen. And being forced into the here and now puts the planning in the right spot. So it's not an escape anymore, but it is enabling that I live here and that I can, of course I still plan for my client meetings, but it's not a hook that falsely offers me security, because I do find the security in the here and now, living all the emotions fully.
So it sounds to me it's more like really short time planning versus long term. We know that this long term, it's like, it's so vague. There's nothing to attach yourself to. You know what I mean? It's everything is so up in the air and so vague that there's nothing concrete to help you. There's no scaffolding for any long-term planning.
And I have to admit, I was a huge long-term planner. And my husband and I, we really made fun about this, because I was all about, I need a perspective, I need a vision, what drives me, and the place where I want to be at like 10 years from now. And what I'm going through right now on all different levels is life seems to be so much richer when I'm not in this narrow tunnel, being focused just on the vision, because that kind of vision or long-term goal is always created by my mind. So it's based on my past experiences, on what society has taught me, on what I have learned that should be. And this is narrow in comparison to what life actually offers.
This is where the difference is. I would love to have a long-term plan, but the moment I let this take over me, I agree. That is not how it should be anymore. I feel like we have to be able to still create a plan and still be open to anything else. At least have that awareness that that is just a plan, an idea, and if God willing it happens, great, but we also need to be open to something else.
I totally agree. So my long-term plan now is to savor the moments and to be in the here and now, and to be aware of what is evolving, and then to make my decisions based on that, what feels right now and what might offer me this kind of flow, where I'm challenged enough, but also can dig into. And because I think the long-term planning, we should really look carefully over it. What are the motivations for our long-term goals and plans? Are they, I need to change, I need to become better? What is driving the definition of our goals? And are those drivers really benefiting us, or are they coming out of some sort of fear or idea that I have learned about myself? So I'm not pretty enough, and so I need to do whatever.
What you pointed at is the core of everything. And I think we talked about this last time. It's what motivates people to do certain things and to figure out what makes them happy.
Yeah. So I learned this phrase when I took this class at the Yale University, online class, Science of Well-Being. So the phrase is miswanting. And I really, really love that.
But we talked about that so many times, how do we come up with strategies to figure out what we should want, so to speak.
This for me is then, we can tie that beautifully into the long-term planning. And suddenly we get kind of thrown back to ourselves to reflect, what do I really want? And why is this long-term goal? Why was that so important? And is this really it?
Yeah. It's funny how we seem to gravitate, no matter where we start. It's funny how we gotta keep track of this, Madhu. We come down somehow to the same stuff. We gotta stop and look at it at some point. Maybe next time.
Yep, let's do that next time.
You have listened to a new episode of Madhu Einsiedler's COVID-19 Crisis Log as part of Madhu's Improvisations on Growth podcast series. Do you feel more at ease now, understanding that living in the moment is really all we have? If planning your life before the crisis brought a sense of security and stability, these days learning to find security in the present might be the best strategy. If you agree or have additional comments, share your thoughts with Madhu directly by emailing her at madhu@einsiedler.at or leave your feedback on her social media on Facebook, LinkedIn, and Twitter. Enjoy improvising and stay tuned for our next episodes.